Hello, I'm Kim Embertson. Recently I had a chance to visit with Kurt Lisney about boats on Rainy Lake in the early days. The 16mm clips in the video are from the 1920s and 30s. I hope you enjoy the stories.
Okay, once again, I'm going to put the caveat in. This is to the best of my understanding, but our area of the lake, which is Home Island, Rest Island, Copenhagen Island, Louise Island, in Goose Island, some of the bigger surrounding islands in our area were all started by Frederick Dunsmore. And he was a pioneer physician in Minneapolis and was in the 1850s, 1860s, and was instrumental in the setting up of the University of Minnesota Medical School. And he formed Fairview Hospital in Minneapolis. He got up in this part of the country going along with George Pillsbury when they were selling off or getting ready to sell off some of the state trust land to build the university. And this is how he first got up there, or generally up in the area. How he got to Rainy Lake specifically in 1900 or 1895, I don't know. But the way they got there, which was very interesting, and this lasted up until the end of the First World War, is they'd get on a Pullman sleeper in Minneapolis, go to Duluth. They'd put the sleeper trains on a car ferry or a railroad ferry that would take them up to Port Arthur, Fort William to the northeast. They'd come back across the Canadian National to Fort Francis, and then they'd be at Rainy Lake, 2 or 3 day trip. And he had a steamboat called the Explorer, which was later converted into gasoline engines. This is our island, Copenhagen Island. And Dunsmore bought that for $300 and then sold it in 1911 to Henry for $500, so he turned a little profit. After the First World War, the railroad was completed. Two things happened. The railroad was completed from Virginia to International Falls, but they also started knocking the road out up here, which was very rough. So by the very early 20s, you could get up to Rainy Lake by Pullman car, which was the way a lot of the times they went. And this lasted up until the late 40s, where you'd get in a car and you get on a Pullman car on a Thursday night, and you'd wake up in the morning and you'd be in Rainier at the boat landing, and you'd pile in your boats and go out and go back. And then during the 6 weeks when everybody was up there, July and August, then the men would get back on this special run train, or the specially run Monday nights, and they'd wake up Monday morning and they'd be in Minneapolis, and they'd put their time in, then they'd come back the next weekend. And that lasted up until the late 40s, and I did that as a very young kid. We did that a couple times, and then for whatever reason it went away. But the motors in the 30s, even up into the 40s, weren't that reliable, and it was quite an undertaking to take off 15 miles from Rainier up with one of these motors where you had about a 50-50 chance of making it without doing something to the motor. So the inboards, big slow inboard boats, still kind of tended to rule. Another way things were supplied, you could get out there was Dwight Smith had a boat called the Rainy Lake, which was a 50-foot converted steamboat that he ran a grocery run up on our part of the lake, up towards Kettle Falls, and then down to Kettle Falls, then up to Cascades. And he'd show up at our island on Monday and drop off passengers, pick up a grocery list, and depart. And then end of the week he'd come back on the second run, and he'd have all the groceries and new guests, and the old guests would get on the boat and go back down to Fort Francis. And this worked great. I thought it was economically, obviously it didn't work because he stopped doing it, but this was a great way to get around the lake in that era. The boats evolved from these 50-foot slow canoe-shaped boats with 50, 75 horse engines in them People had their speedboats, so we got some pictures of that. Uncle Henry loved fast boats that were wet and impractical, but our family had a 26 Chris Craft semi-enclosed from the 40s, 30s up until the 50s. Then we had another bigger one after that. Once again, inboard wood boats, big, slow, comfortable, a lot of maintenance. And as soon as the roads poked around the shoreline, all the big boats tended to go away, and then these 16 and 18 foot outboard boats, although they weren't as comfortable, they were loud, they were wet, they were a hell of a lot cheaper and a hell of a lot easier to take care of.